similarly, and
And
therefore,
there will be social distancing in line, which we've been doing.
by the way, 7 by 7 is 49 square feet, inserting 2 questions in lieu of 1.
Well, we are, to answer the one, we are social distancing because people are standing in line by social distancing. It's being enforced by the folks in the beach several times these past 2 or 3 weeks.
I'm interested in the number of bodies on the beach.
David, if I can jump in here and help.
Yeah, please.
I just want to say, because Mr. Shotman, when I heard that sounds good to me too, 140, 2 months, we can all sit on top of each other. We just have to stay 6 feet away from you and your family and Gary and his family. And so people are going to walk on in units of 2, 3, 4, 5. They're going to
in here. They can eat 1,000. And with all the conversation that's gone on, the reality of actually hitting that number is going to be minimized to maybe once a weekend between the hours of 10 and 3 when it's 90 degrees. We're probably not going to come anywhere near to that number on 90% of the days out of the summer.
Do you anticipate that number? Let's take your 5 days of the summer when that will occur, or 3 days. That number will be spread disproportionately among the beach. How do you account for that? Again, I have 2 grandchildren, 9 and 11. So I have these numbers and how that works. There's no way, given the scenario, that you're going to spread those numbers out relatively evenly among the, I don't know, I haven't counted the number of beaches in the borough lately, but that's just not going to happen. So there's going to be some excess loading, in my view, on or the immediately contiguous beach. And there's no way to control that to at least spread out that additional load.
Well, I think Mr. Brown referenced that in his phases, didn't you, David?
Yes. Basically, that particular beach will be shut down. We have counters with the gate guards counting bodies going in as well. So if a beach gets
and who makes that determination?
The Bradley Beach Police Department, myself as the administrator, and there's a beach manager. There'll be several people involved with the decision.
Is that it's not one person who's making the decision. It's going to be an observation. It'll probably most likely come, it gets really crowded, and they're going to bring in Dave, they're going to bring in the police, and everybody's going to make a group decision. There's no other way. We can't leave this to one person.
I'm pleased to hear that, frankly. And so the lifeguards know that they're going to be tasked, if you will, with that responsibility. Again, of these beaches, and we're all these issues. It's a Herculean job, and by and large, a thankless one. I understand that, but I do.
First time we're entering into uncharted waters here.
How much of every quarter or dollar that's in there does the town get? And I asked, may not.
In front of as well as beach badge. So
I only raised it because I didn't.
Reference to the establishment of Shade Tree Commission, should there be a death or a resignation from that commission, and the one that's filling in the spot of the unexpired term starts as alternate number 2. It doesn't specify that, and I think that should say that to make it clear. Of employees, that it'll be fixed by the commission. Would that be like Public Works employees, or who would that be?
Which I said at the beginning, I think it's, so that is in there. I'm not sure there's any intention amongst this governing body. Member 2.
Asking.
It says that they can have in commission may appoint such, here it is, it's E under powers. The commission may appoint such clerks and other employees as it may require, and as shall be that. The Shade Tree Commission can have employees theoretically, but not without the majority of the 5 people sitting at council meeting saying it's okay, and passing a salary ordinance for those employees.
Okay, all right, well,
Greg,
that
wouldn't that
would be
apply-
20-10. In the first sentence, I would like to see that we, in this, everything electronically, this is going to help the borough tremendously. Number one, you have the people in the front office, the girls, they could go and file what you call it, look at up all the plans and everything for the Oprah request. We're talking a lot of money, whereas electronically everything is there. And I'd like to see that.
Most of the stuff I do out of state that's kind of like have sense. So I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, well, we should.
David?
Okay, last but not least, forgive me if I pronounce this wrong. Karav, K-A-R-A-V.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello? Okay, great. Sorry for not being on video. I will hope to be quick and non-controversial. Firstly, I would really like to thank David and the others involved in trying to solve for our beach situation this summer. I know it's a ton of work and it's so important to all of us, and we're gonna all just have to be very patient. You asked for public opinion on the proposal. I agree with the person who said we really should reconsider it next year in the event that we can bring that down, because it is a lot of money for one person to get on the beach. I do believe Ms. Rice mentioned one, and the app is saying they're sold out. So can you clarify how those
Yes.
300 remaining badges may be purchased?
The 300 badges are live badges from Beach Badge Huts.
That's right. Not on Vipley. Vipley is sold out.
Vipley was sold out in
Got
about
it.
5
Thank
minutes
you.
on Saturday morning.
Just wanted to throw my two cents. Part-time in Hoboken. Hoboken has a shade tree request. I haven't read the proposal that you have in place, but I heard $3,000 and it does sound.
And my question is, what are we doing umbrella as the short-term summer?
The agenda only?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well-
Gary, if I can make, and unfortunately, it looks like Pete Sharp's not here anymore. We're raising the price to make it a liquid situation.
And then it's only when the fee comes into place, or you can plant 4 trees in lieu of that. And the idea is, and this is the point that Councilman Bennell touched on that I think is very important, it's far cheaper for the residents to plant the trees than for us to pay public employees and buy them at public contracting prices. So this whole thing is set up really for them to just plant the trees themselves, because that's the most economical way to do it in town. And if only they come to a point where they can't do that, do they have to pay the fee. So I just wanted to be clear about that. We're not charging people anything other than a $50 fee if they're agreeing to plant a replacement tree or equivalent trees for what they're taking down. I wanted to make sure the public had that impression before they left here tonight.
That's great clarification. Thank you. David?
Mayor, we have Steve Losowick on the phone. Steve, please unmute yourself.
Mr. Lozowick, please unmute your phone. David, anyone else?
Wait a minute, Mayor, let me just, no, that's it. If Steve's not coming on, that's it.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the introduction of the 2 ordinances. As indicated earlier, tonight is just the introduction. And at the next meeting, we would have the public hearing, and if there's and any amendments, and then final adoption. So Greg, I know that this is reiterating what we've been talking about extensively, but if you'll walk us through both one of these ordinances at a time, please.
Sure, I'll start with the easier one, which is 2020-10. That's the zoning permit ordinance. As we discussed last time, the zoning permit provisions in the current borough code are in the administrative and a non-intuitive place. The zoning officer indicated it would be much better if it was moved to the zoning ordinance where people would logically look for it and put better standards and modernize it. So that's 2020-10. It's relatively simple. It doesn't really change anything other than where the process is located. and puts the parameters, actually puts them in writing for people that George Waterman, the zoning officers, has been following according to the book. 2020-09 is the shade tree ordinance, which we just discussed at length. This expands the regulations of shade trees within the borough onto private property, as I described, with a permit application process for trees that are not diseased, dead, or otherwise destroyed, or being destroyed. Healthy trees essentially being destroyed at the option of the owner, our application fee, and then a tree replacement plan if the tree is 5 inches or more. Beyond that, it also puts different, more extensive parameters in for the grass planting strips and other areas surrounding the borough right-of-ways and the trees in the parks, and tightens and expands the Shade Tree Commission's authority to the full breadth of the statute and into today's case law. So that's the breadth of it. I think we talked a lot about a lot of the individual provisions, but the overall structure is tree on public property. No one can touch it without the Shade Tree Commission's permission. Tree in the right of way. No one can touch it without the Shade Tree Commission's permission. Tree, you can trim, take care of your own trees on your own property and do everything. But once you want to remove one, then you need a permit for $50 and potentially replacements if there's not one of the enumerated reasons for removal of the tree. So that's the overall rubric in a nutshell for the public.
Okay. That's a great summary. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to introduce ordinance number 2020-09. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Mr. Bunnell,
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose,
Yes.
Mr. Sexsmith,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Mayor Engelstad.
Yes, Greg, thank you for all your work on that one, and your summary was spot on. The second one, I make a motion to introduce ordinance number 2020-10. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Bunnell,
Second.
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose,
Yes.
Mr. Sexsmith,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Mayor Engelstad.
Yes, thank you. The consent agenda includes the following items. Item A is the bill list. Item B, authorize a tax title lien redemption in the amount of $3,064.60 for 507.5 Lorraine Avenue. And item C, authorize a gazebo rental refund of $500. Would anyone like any of these voted out separately? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Bunnell,
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose,
Yes.
Mr. Sexsmith,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Mayor Engelstad.
Yes, the following resolutions. David, I'm going to ask you to explain why we're making an additional change to Erica's duties, please.
Basically 2020-122, appointing Erica as the Registrar of Vital Statistics. In accordance with the statute, NJSA 26(8)-11 states that a municipality having less than 5,000 population, the municipal clerk must be appointed as the Registrar of Vital Statistics, and that's what this resolution effectuates.
Okay, thank you.
Can
I'll
I
make, I'm
Can I
sorry.
ask a question about this? David, does this mean that previously our Registrar of Vital Statistics wasn't the clerk? It was another person?
Previously, to my knowledge, it was Kelly.
It was, yes.
Okay, so we're just going with it. Great, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2020-122, appointing Erica Costas as Registrar of Vital Statistics. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Bunnell,
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose,
Yes.
Mr. Sexsmith,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Mayor Engelstad.
Yes, with regards supportive of this, because we both have, we're very blessed that she wants to expand her duties in Bradley Beach to being a member of the Environmental Committee. Alan, am I? Okay,
You are
Yes.
100% speaking for me appropriately. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
all right. So I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2020-123, appointing Liz Hernandez as the Environmental Committee member. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose? Al?
Looks like a bad signal.
Okay.
Frozen.
Okay, Mr. Sexsmith?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Engelstad?
Yes, and I heard.
I heard you, Al. I heard you.
Yes.
Great. I'm in and out here.
David already discussed resolutions 124 through 128 to just basically give us better buying power. Am I reflecting that accurately, David?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to approve resolutions 2020, 124, 125, 126, 127, and 128. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose?
Yes.
Mr. Sexsmith?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Engelstad?
Yes. Resolution 2020-129 updates are, I'm sorry, I'm one ahead. So David, could you walk us through 129, please?
Yes, very quickly, Monmouth County has received CARES Act funds from the United States Treasury to reimburse for the county for economic damage caused by the coronavirus. This agreement is a standard agreement that was reviewed by the borough attorney and myself, and we concur and agree that this agreement is fair and in line with how the agreement should read, and that we're recommending the governing body approve this. This will effectuate us being able to participate in the coronavirus relief fund program that the county of Monmouth is established.
Thank you. Make a motion to approve resolution 2020-129. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose?
Yes.
Mr. Sexsmith?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Engelstad?
Yes. Resolution 2020-130 is an updating of our state of emergency reflecting the governor's latest guidance. Would the chief or David like to expand on that at all?
We specifically included the beachfront area, which was omitted earlier because at the time we never expected it to go this far. But we were also waiting for the governor to give us some direction.
Okay. Make a motion to approve resolution 2020-130. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Highlight a couple things that I think are lacking in clarity. I don't know if it's possible to consider a few minor edits to the document.
I think what we're doing tonight is memorizing a document that's already been signed by the chief and myself.
Okay.
He's referring to the regulations on the beach.
You want to go ahead and make your comments, Alan?
Well, I was concerned just to the extent this is, a reference point for the public. Under the beach and boardwalk use and access descriptions, at least as I read it, there seemed to be some areas that needed greater clarity. For example, the very first bullet, commencing at 9 a.m. on Saturday, May 23rd, beach will be staffed and open to season and daily batch holders. But I think this is referencing weekends beginning May 23rd through I guess when they open it fully on June 18th. But we don't really address the weekends of May 30th and June 6th and June 13th. I was wondering if I'm correct, should we just add clarity that this applies to those 3 remaining weekends? And then I guess the second bullet references commencing on 9 a.m. May 26th, beach will be staffed on a daily basis. I believe this is referencing weekdays. And I just, again, thought maybe for clarity, if that's correct, that we should add that it'd be weekdays after that date, until June 18th. So anyway, those were my two two questions that I wanted raised.
I'll discuss those with the chief, and if we could, and if we feel an amended declaration is required, we'll make those changes.
Thank you.
That's not part of the declaration. That's not, those guidelines have to do with the beach. That was incorporated in the declaration.
Right.
But the declaration itself, it just deals with enforcement issues with regard to the beachfront.
So that's part of the beach plan that he's referring
That's
to.
correct. That's
Okay.
correct. That's two different.
All right.
really two different-
We'll amend the beach plan to reflect that out. The published
Thank you.
beach. So at this point, I make a motion to approve resolution 2020-130. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Bennell,
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose,
Yes.
Mr. Sexsmith,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Mayor Engelstep.
Yes, resolution 2020-131 is with regards to the PBA contract for the period of 2020 to 2023. And this has been a lengthy ongoing process that was somewhat made a little bit more difficult by the changing of CFOs, obviously by the COVID-19 crisis and our inability to get in a room together. Also, there was a lot of good give and take on both sides with regards to what the appropriate numbers would be. And so at this point, we believe we have come together with a fair and equitable agreement. And from a point of perspective, it is within the mid-range of many of the local towns. It is not overly generous, nor is it overly restrictive to the PBA. So I want to thank the members of the PBA who have been extremely patient as we've gone through some leadership changes. But I think that we have come to a good, solid agreement here.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, would it be appropriate to let the public know what the details? I mean, not every detail.
Yeah,
the basic.
the main points are the increases that was negotiated. It's a two-tier increase. Those officers that are out of the steps would receive a 2.4 increase in the year 2025, increase in 2021, and a 2.6 increase in 2022. Those members that are still within the steps would receive a 1.2% increase in 2020, a 1.25 increase in 2021, and a 1.3 increase in 2022.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2020-131. Is there a second?
Mr. Bennell,
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose,
Yes.
Mr. Sexsmith,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Mayor Engelstep.
Yes. And finally, resolution 2020-132 does have the dollar amount of 13 plugged in here. Before I make that resolution reduction, I just want to make sure that we are all comfortable with that dollar amount.
Sounds like the right number to me, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. And all right, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2020-132, increasing the daily badge fee to $13 to offset unexpected COVID-19 expenses. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Bennell,
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose,
Yes.
Mr. Sexsmith,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Mayor Engelstep.
Yes, and I just want to publicly thank Sandy, Councilmember Gubatose, and David for all the work that they put into us reaching that number. Now it's time for Mayor and Council reports. Council President Weber.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to say for our Memorial Day ceremony, we had a great little ceremony at the firehouse. I want to thank the firehouse and all the members for participating, and the mayor did a great job with that ceremony. So I'm sure you'll hear more about that. And one thing that was mentioned in the speeches given was the number of calls that the fire and first aid folks are going out where they know the person's COVID positive, and they just made a point that nobody on our squad, thankfully, has contracted the disease by going out on those calls. So people are being careful, people are being safe, and that's good for Bradley Beach. That's really, really happy to hear about that. I'm going to mention some shade tree stuff. We don't have a shade tree commission yet, but just by example, given the conversation we had before, that we're going to have a shade tree commission, and that's going to help us. It's going to help people make better choices with respect to like putting a tree in the planting strip. And I'll just give you an example. Right around the corner from my house, somebody chopped down 3 trees on their property the other day. They were big, mature white oaks and hickory trees, and good trees. There was actually nothing wrong with them, but they in their trees in the planting strip, and what they planted were maple trees. And there isn't a maple tree in this town that's not pulling up the sidewalk. And had we had the shade tree commission involved and the arborist involved, they may have said, that's not the best tree for you to be planting in the planting strip, because down the road it might cause a problem. So this is, I think we're going to solve some problems. Like Al said, it's not perfect, but this is our best shot at it. The main point is we're going to have a professional involved, and then a group of people that get knowledgeable and are going to make good decisions or help people make good decisions. With respect to community development, I think you heard earlier in the meeting, we are working on an ordinance that's going to allow restaurants to expand their footprint temporarily, just so they can increase social distancing when they are allowed to have people dining in person. So if it's putting up a tent or using a parking space in front of their place, something like that. But I will emphasize the idea is that they need to come into the zoning office with a plan, say, this is what we'd like to do. And we're in the process of putting together that ordinance to allow them to do that. On the Environmental Commission, David and Diageo, we were on a call with Sustainable Jersey. It looks like we're getting an energy fellow. It's basically an intern to help us with energy issues this summer. It's going to help us put together an energy audit, hopefully for some of our buildings, which will be really helpful to the borough down the road. Obviously, with respect to the beach, we didn't have much of a beach weekend, but it's looking good. It's looking ready. I would like to say that those beach rules we were just discussing, we had a member, I asked somebody that I know is fluent in Spanish to translate it into Spanish. And I agree with Councilman Gubitosi, we have to get a couple things clarified, because when we took a closer look at the English, we said, well, what does this really mean? So, but we're very close to actually having all those beach rules and everything that tourism is putting out translated into Spanish. So that's going to be a welcome addition. And I just want to add one thing for the administrator, Mr. Brown. I know I made you aware recently of this agreement that we have with the DEP regarding nesting shorebirds and things that we can do and can't do on the beachfront. I think we have to make sure we get that to the to Dick Johnson, because it seems like there are places we're not supposed to be driving on the beach, and it looks like the lifeguard vehicles are driving there. So maybe we'll just go over that with him, and that's it. That's actually that's my report. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Sexsmith.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to touch briefly on Memorial Day. That is a very, very solemn day for me, and I appreciate the participation, everybody in the fire department, and the mayor and the council also participating in what was really a beautiful and solemn ceremony. So thank you for that. Quality of life. Again, would like to remind everybody, the residents and property owners, that we need to try and take advantage of this nice spring weather, make sure our yards are being properly maintained. And QOL would also like to remind everyone about the parking regulations in town, specifically about blocking driveways or no parking on lawns. And lastly, if your vehicle doesn't fit in the driveway and it obstructs the sidewalk, then it needs to be moved. Report out from the police department. In addition to all the enforcement activities that they're taking on down on the beach, keeping everybody safe down there, they also assisted a neighboring community with the apprehension and arrest of an armed robbery suspect. And the chief has also reported that there continue to be ongoing vehicle burglaries in the neighboring communities. They've all involved thefts from unlocked vehicles. So the takeaway from this, as I said last meeting, is these crimes can be stopped simply by locking your vehicle and removing your belongings. Nobody's breaking in. They're not breaking windows. They're not jimmying locks. They're not doing anything like that. They're walking down the street, hitting door handles until they find one that's unlocked, and they go in, they rifle through it, they take what they can, and they move on. Last thing I'd like to touch on is bicycle safety and some of the rules for the road. It started to get very busy out there with bicycles on the streets. And it seems like there's a general lack of knowledge about what's required for riding a bicycle properly and safely in accordance with the laws in town and in New Jersey. So bicycles are considered vehicles. So that means they have to obey all the same rules that cars do. It means you have to bike in the same direction of traffic flow. It means you have to yield to pedestrians and other vehicles. You should not ride on sidewalks. Riding on sidewalks increases the risk to pedestrians and makes it harder for drivers to see the bikers. And it actually increases your risk of being hit by a car if you're riding on a sidewalk. You need to obey all traffic signals and signs. You need to yield before moving or turning left. So if you're looking to make a left turn and you would normally want to move into the center of the lane to make your left turn, you need to make sure that you don't have a car who's screaming up behind you that's going to have to try and take some evasive action to avoid you. Use hand signals, right? It's the same as driving a car. Don't keep it a secret. Let everyone know what you intend to do if you're going to make a left turn or a right turn. It's very easy. And lastly, there is no biking on the boardwalk from 10 a.m. to midnight until sometime at the end of the summer. That's the end of my report.
And Chief Guida would like to piggyback on some of your comments.
Yes, Councilman, I just want to let you know, I'm sorry I didn't get this information to you sooner, but the late breaking news, the 3-car burglaries, there's an arrest imminent on that. We have a suspect, he's under arrest and he's going to be charged.
Thank you, Chief. That's good news.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Gubitosi.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me start with the planning board update. As everyone's aware, just about a month ago, the planning board met, and a very significant topic. We spent probably 4 hours on the topic of collecting public feedback related to the concession on the planned concession on Salt Restaurant. After that lengthy discussion, our planning board attorney and our chairperson, Mr. Shuck, are working diligently to pull together all of the comments from the public, along with all of the comments and sentiments from the planning board members. I believe we are close, the planning board is, to finishing that summary and delivering that summary to the mayor and council. The plan has always been that those comments would be considered when negotiating the final contract with the folks who represent the Salt Restaurant. So I just wanted to get that officially out to the public, because I have had repeated questions about the status of that since it was about a month ago. Our next planning board meeting is in 2 days. So there may be more to share at that meeting. More of an update, that is. With Sylvan Lake, as I've mentioned in prior meetings, there is a plan to have the Department of Environmental Protection evaluate a restoration plan that is being evolved as we speak. It's a bit of a living, breathing document. It's not at all a formalized plan, but the concept is there, and they're presenting it to DEP to get feedback. But what has been a recent focus of residents has been the fact that we lowered Sylvan Lake in order to repair the valve at the east end. And a couple of the questions raised specifically about Sylvan Lake and the lowered water level was the fact that it was visible that there was areas of large debris. And the question was raised, can we remove that debris? We've been in contact with Biagio Cofone, our DPW lead, who has been working with Avon DPW, coordinating with the mayor of Avon to make sure that we can get resources, shared resources with ourselves and Avon to try to target some of the larger debris in the lake. And as of earlier today, Biagio shared with me that they will try to get a combined team out in the lake tomorrow to try to remove pieces that are movable. The most important thing I want to share with the public, all of whom are raising concerns about the debris, is that lake bottom is very dangerous. And in fact, one of our DPW workers actually was momentarily stuck in the mud, having difficulty extracting himself. With the help of others, was able to get out. But I think that just raised everyone's awareness of the danger risks involved in trying to work their way out into the lake. So Biagio and his team are going to try to address that via boat access tomorrow. The one comment I wanted to make about the Memorial Day ceremony, beyond what's already been stated, is that our own Erica Kositz actually has an amazing singing voice, and she sang the God Bless America, and it was just a captivating production. So Erica, thank you very much for that effort. I was really struck by your talent.
You're welcome. Thank you, Al.
Wanted to mention that Liz Hernandez, who has just been appointed to our Environmental Commission, also is heading up the Main Street Task Force. And Liz has called a Main Street Task Force meeting for tomorrow evening at 6 p.m., a virtual meeting. And we will be discussing two key elements. One is the grant that has already been awarded to Bradley Beach. It's called the Walkable Community Workshop, but it's a grant that's going to focus on how we can enhance pedestrian and bicycle accommodation in our central business district. So we'll be working through some of the logistics of that plan with our task force. And separately, Liz has developed a resident survey. And people may remember that the Main Street Task Force authored a merchant survey that was distributed to Main Street merchants and collected a lot of feedback from our merchants about things they'd like to see done differently or improved on Main Street. Now we're going to ask the residents. Of course, it's a much larger undertaking to ask up to 4,000 residents as opposed to more or less 100 businesses. But that plan, the draft survey has already been prepared. We'll be reviewing that, and then we'll be working through the logistics of how to best distribute that, hopefully electronically, to our residents. And then I wanted to also mention, as everyone's aware, we do have a community center committee / task force that's largely been identified, although we still need to name a couple of residents to join that task force. But Min, who's heading that up, is very anxious to get that task force meeting and underway. One of the most critical things we'll want to address is just how to protect the property going forward. It's now our property, it's our investment. We just want to make sure, especially that we protect the property from any additional water damage. There's already been water infiltration damage that we need to address, and we want to make sure we keep that from worsening. And that is it for my reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bennell?
I really like going last because Al and Tim and John usually take care of 90% of what's on my mind. I just got a couple of little taglines. One thing that I've been noticing is the benches on the promenade, which have been wired off with caution tape, in an increasing number now, are starting to unravel. And all of that caution tape is going to end up on the beach and in the water. I understand the initial caution with taping them off, but after putting some thought into it and watching what other towns have been doing, I don't think that there's a real great concern that individuals who don't know each other are going to go sit down next to somebody out of the blue. You're going to have fathers and daughters, mothers and sons, siblings. The benefit of keeping people off those benches is really not going to outweigh all of that caution tape ending up on the beach in the water. And I really think we should take the caution tape off and just leave it alone. We haven't restricted benches anywhere else in town. An issue that's been a little bit below the waterline for quite some time now, but it continues to get worse. I had a conversation with Biagio Capone this morning, and he told me that on Friday and Saturday, when it was raining, he probably would have stayed drier outside of his office than inside. We have a building that is 100 years old and has a number of problems. It has very restricted parking. We have a new public works yard on the north side of town with huge potential for a new facility. And I'm not talking about building something this year and spending millions of dollars in the next 12 months. This is something that needs to be part of a grander capital plan. Last year, before the budget season, I raised some concerns and made some noise about getting a real capital plan in place, which we did a good framework for, but it kind of fell by the wayside for a number of reasons. And I think we really need to resurrect that capital plan and start looking at it as a real plan, not just a wish list. And one of the things that we need to do is consider a new Department of Public Works building. The building over there is 100 years old, and fixing the roof is just not an option because it's a real heavy lift cost-wise. So I'd like to see over the next 6 months before we get into the rising tide of the budget season next year, that we develop a real good capital plan for the next 6 years. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. A couple of items. We weren't able to do our little parade with Roy Christensen, and we will honor Roy as he is deservedly should be at the appropriate time. It may not be next year. It may be sometime later this year. Yeah, I also want to thank the fire company for letting us use the building. I thought that was a very special event that indoors like that. Thank my wife, who became a camera person for that event. If you have the opportunity to rewatch these on the Facebook page, not just the ceremony that we did, but the remarks that Chief Guida made at the Jack Wright Memorial, and also the comments that Department Memorial. I want to thank Amy Hall for everything she did with some of these changes that were made at the last minute. And thank Pat Roddy for his Little Bradley Beach concert he did on Saturday night online. Again, thank the members of the PBA for their patience as we got through this process. It's always a pleasure to work with them. Want to thank our Department of Public Works. They always are busy this time of year getting the beach ready, but they took on so many more additional items with regards to increased signage, with regards to COVID-19. They built additional lifeguard stands, special barriers for the entrance attendants. A lot of work that was not in their original plan, and they got through it pretty well. I want to thank David for his efforts in securing a vendor for the Second Avenue Pavilion. We were going into this season with no one running that pavilion, and he was able to negotiate someone to come in who plans to spend a lot of money in there, and we look forward to that. We'll be approving that soon. With regards to the Business Alliance, David and I are working with Paula Gavin and others to put together an event when the governor says it's appropriate to do so. When the businesses can reopen, we're going to have a Main Street party that says Bradley is back. So we hope that we can do that soon. I have received a couple of emails from people that said, hey, just close Main Street and give the businesses more room. We can't do that. Closing Main Street is a state road, and it takes a lot of work just to get it closed for a couple of hours for a special event. So hope you all realize that. And finally, folks, if you're on the boardwalk, please put a mask on. Thank you. Now is the time for public comment. David?
Okay, hands are starting to come up. Ms. Greenblatt Janoff?
Hi, Shauna Greenblatt Janoff, 414 Monmouth Avenue. Concerns, some comments, some questions about the plans for the beach this summer. With regard to the beach procedures that have been posted so far, can you address the density issues and how they'll be managed in the public restrooms? How we're going to manage the density when we're not really monitoring the beach, because for the first few weeks of June, and also how we're going to manage the entry points to the beach when we have seasonal badge goers, people with their bicycles, these lines that are going to have to be formed in a socially distanced way at the kiosk to purchase the daily badges, with social distancing while everybody else is entering the beach. It's going to be quite dense and very concerning. So those are some questions that I have, and then I'd like to follow up with a couple of comments as well.
Okay, David, I believe the first was with regards to restrooms.
Yeah, well, regards to the restrooms, we have DPW workers constantly there cleaning them. And we are considering putting another person on just to monitor the individuals going in the bathrooms.
That probably is a really important,
Well, I say considering that because we haven't identified yet the person to do that, but that's what we want to do. Doing that, but we found that last weekend that's very difficult for them to clean and then try to monitor as well.
Absolutely.
So
That's
we're just, everyone has to understand that this is a very fluid situation. We're going to be changing things.
We're in the season. We're in the season right now.
It's a trial and error type of situation.
We don't have room for error. We don't have room for the numbers to rise back up, because then we'll really be in trouble.
I totally agree with you, but I'm just asking you to give us a chance to make adjustments as necessary.
I'm giving you a chance, but I will tell you that everyone that I speak with who lives in Bradley Beach are thinking, we're not going to use the bathrooms. We're not going to drink on the beach, because the bathrooms could pose a very dangerous situation. And I think this is really something that we have to put in place. Honestly, weekend with the weather, because I was concerned that we weren't so prepared if it were a beautiful summer beach weekend. And we don't know what's ahead. We don't know if the numbers are going to start to go back up as we go back out, and won't we be lucky if they do? So this is a big concern. It's a concern when you talk about, the lines that we're forming along the boardwalk. Our boardwalk on a beautiful summer's day is going to be very crowded. Those of us who ride our bikes to the beach, hitch our bikes along the fencing, add that to the people who are coming. A very big concern with people who are coming from other places, whether it's within Monmouth County, not at the shoreline, whether it's within New Jersey or New York, coming to our beach, planning to come to the beach. And then what happens when we've already sold our daily passes? How does that get managed? Because I could see a lot of anger.
Well, just so you know, the county has initiated an extensive public relations effort to know, it's called Know Before You Go, which is really encouraging any beachgoer to any Monmouth County beach to call ahead and to find out, do you have badges left, or should I look elsewhere?
Where do they call to find that out on a Saturday?
That's going to be on all the major radio stations. I don't know what number they're calling, but
on the Monmouth County Freeholders website as well, man.
Okay. I mean, look, I understand. I'm not just standing. What are you guys going to do? It's just it's overwhelming to you to make these decisions. I appreciate everything that you're doing. I don't want to be in the position that you're in, because it's really not a great situation. But for those of us as residents living in Bradley Beach, these are all very valid concerns.
Absolutely.
Yeah, with regards to the booth, the badge booths, there are markings all through the promenade that dictate where people should be standing 6 feet apart. Also, you had a question about how is the beach going to be monitored between now and June 18th? That does not, just because there's no badge attendant or a lifeguard does not preclude the specials and others to be monitoring the beach on a regular basis, regardless of what the date is.
Right. I find it implausible to task, this is my opinion, to task lifeguards who are guarding the ocean and swimming to also be mindful about the entire beach. I'm not sure they can do both of those things at the same time properly. A couple of other things. Will there be signage, proper signage about beach protocol at the beach entry in the same way that there's signage about all the current established rules for the beach?
Yeah, I was just on the boardwalk this morning.
It's there now.
Go ahead, Dave.
No, I was just saying, Mary, it's there now. All the signage is basically up and posted.
And it's by the bathrooms and so forth?
Correct.
Okay. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention, and this was something I was a little bit disappointed with, the announcement about, the beach protocol, the plans, the rules for the beach were announced on social media initially. They were announced on Facebook and they were announced on Nextdoor. And anyone who was on Facebook and Nextdoor can attest to the fact that there have been enormous threads of confusion, and confusion compounding with more confusion, and then opinions, and then politics. And it gets very nasty and very frustrating. I think there have been some missed opportunities, and I'm asking again for comprehensive communication to our community. I think that our small Bradley Beach community deserves to be spoken to by the mayor, and I say this very respectfully. We're all working hard together. We are here to protect you. When an emergency notification goes out, whether it's about the Memorial Day parade or whatever, refer everyone to the Bradley Beach website to take a look at. That's an opportunity to advise everyone to take a look at what the rules that we're working so hard to put in place. When the email for the beach lockers go out, it's an easy opportunity to communicate, these are the rules that we're working on. There was nothing said about that at all. Even those of us, God forbid, the numbers do go up. Each of the beach lockers are not 6 feet apart. So we're really relying on, everyone doing their part. And as we well know, at least, I don't always see the glass half full. I'm concerned that that's not going to happen. So I'm speaking out, and I'm really asking for communication with our little community, and to be sure that way we can all be on the same page and not so much confusion.
Okay, thank you. David?
Next we have Kim Janussi.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the opportunity. I would have raised this earlier, but I thought there was going to be more discussion on the ordinances, so I'm leaving it till now. I just had a couple of questions and comments on ordinance 2020-10. The first is a question, maybe for Mr. Cannon. So in section 535 D2C, it talks about the duties of the zoning officer, and specifically talks about the interpretation of section 450. Do you agree that the interpretation of 450 is left to the zoning board, and the zoning board would actually have oversight of the zoning officer? I just want to clarify.
Generally, yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, section 10, which section?
5-35 D2C.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Ultimately, you appeal the zoning officer to the zoning board, yes.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that was also your interpretation. The second is a kind of a question and also a suggestion for 450-79, both D and B. D is violations and B is enforcement. There's nothing in the current section that talks about timing for response or for remediating. And I think that, you know, it might actually be helpful to put in some time frame by which, you know, code violations that are reported to the borough would be responded to or remediated or resolved. You know, there are situations where things are outstanding and you know, there is no response at all. You know, and I think there's also, you know, there are situations where this is extremely effective. This entire section is extremely effective when the town, you know, takes it upon themselves and has an interest in enforcement. But if they're not interested in enforcing, it's, you know, it's a little bit difficult to actually get that done as a homeowner, as an interested homeowner. And so building in some timelines and timeframes for response would actually be helpful. So that's just a suggestion. And along those lines, I think 450-79F allows for a private citizen to bring an action to the extent, you know, they feel it's necessary to enforce, which is helpful. I guess I have one question and one comment. So the first question is, again, probably for Mr. Cannon, is it consistent with the MLUL to allow a private citizen to bring an enforcement action for an ordinance?
I'm not a land use attorney, so I don't know off the top of my head, but I believe you are able to under the MLUL.
I don't know the answer.
I'm not positive, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure there is a civil right of action though in the MLUL.
Okay. And then the second point, you know, related to that is, if in fact the borough decides not to enforce and ultimately a homeowner is then required to enforce, you know, instead of the borough doing it, there should be some provision for costs associated, because frankly, our tax dollars are going towards paying you know, a zoning group that their job is enforcement. And if they're ultimately not willing to enforce and private citizens then have to go out of pocket to do so, there should be some, you know, reimbursement for those costs, because it's not cheap to do that. You know, obviously the preference is that zoning is enforced by the borough. But when there are situations that doesn't happen and a homeowner has no other choice, you know, to take legal action and subject the town to litigation, which, you know, the town then has to defend and incur additional costs. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have some kind of a provision for reimbursement of homeowners that have to take that action. And those are my comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave, I promised Eileen she could go first, so let's go with Eileen now.
Okay.
Thank you. I just want to have some, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to have some clarification on the code enforcement. I heard that on summer rentals and group, more or less, excuse the expression, group rentals. But my bigger concern is, what are we doing with code enforcement for long-term rentals in Bradley Beach?
David, you want to address that?
I need better clarification on that. I mean, the regular process is in place. People, a long-term rental, whether it be annual, and the inspection officer goes out and does the CO inspection. I mean, is there a specific issue there that needs to be addressed?
I am concerned. I think many year-round residents are concerned about long-term rentals and whether or not they are following the codes that are expected of them to follow. Occupancy and numerous codes that they're supposed to be enforcing.
Can I just add that Eileen, that should be addressed by complaint. And, you know, if somebody rents their house out for a year to somebody else, and then for whatever reason, the lawn's not getting cut or something, you know, if that's the type of thing you mean, like codes and maintenance, I mean, it is the responsibility of the property owner, but I would think that gets addressed through complaint.
But this isn't, my concern isn't necessarily homes. It's talking about multi-apartments that have long-term rentals and their renewals. And we don't know whether or not they, my concern is, are they need to follow to guarantee the residents are protected?
I have to say yes. I mean, the internal stuff, I have to agree with the council president. If it's an outside issue, we will see it through code enforcement. But if there's some things happening on the inside, we won't get to inspect that place again until they come up for another CO inspection. So it's a complaint for us to go in there and actually check that out.
But are the CO, are they being renewed, the COs, are they being renewed regularly? Or do they have to apply for the COs?
Yes, they're supposed to apply annually for their long-term rental or when they change occupancy.
Do they have to show how many people are living in these apartments?
Yes, they have to list them.
I'm a little bit confused because how do we know that the people who are filing for renewal of occupant COs?
If it's in, I can answer that question. If it's an apartment building, the fire codes, if it's over more than 4 units, there's a fire official, they have to do all kinds of inspections. They're registered with the DCA. If you're talking about like someone renting their single family house for, let's say, a year, the answer is they're supposed to apply to us. I could answer the question in this way. Every single person we know is renting a house for a year either has a CO or a citation to municipal court for not getting a CO. If we don't know about them, then it's hard for the code enforcement officer to, we're not out there looking for people renting properties that aren't supposed to be. But we often get, those tenants, when people are doing what they're supposed to, it often results in a complaint because there's something else going on. And then we go out there and enforce it. People who aren't complying are subject to $2,000 a day for not having a CO. So there's a serious penalty that's behind having a CO. Whether anyone up here could guarantee that every single person that's renting the place for a year right now in Bradley Beach has a CO and isn't operating illegally, we could never make that representation to you any given day up here. But everyone we know about either has a citation or has a CO. And if there's anyone that you know about that could be renting it that we don't know about, it doesn't hurt to just send the address to the code enforcement office and they check the files and see if they have a CO. And if they don't, then they get a summons in the mail if it's not owner occupied and there's a tenant.
Okay.
That's the overarching answer to your question.
Well, thank you. But I'm not necessarily concerned about homes. I'm concerned about multiple apartment buildings.
So anything that's over 4 units anywhere in the state of New Jersey is registered with the DCA, and the state inspects them in addition to numerous and varied requirements that are required to run a rental property of more than 4 units in the state of New Jersey. So I feel very comfortable telling you that anyone who has 4 or more units in the town of Bradley Beach is in compliance with certainly COs. I can't guarantee there's no violations on their property, but definitely has a CO and a DCA registration, or they'd have serious problems if they're 4 or more units.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. David?
Next up is Bill.
Yes. I have a question in reference to the tent for the restaurants and other businesses. Who approves the tent location and size?
As I mentioned before, Bill, we're still working on an ordinance for this. And as I envision it, and as I've discussed, say it's a restaurant owner, they would have to come into the zoning board and say, hey, this is what I want to do. Our zoning officer is checking that it's not conflicting with any other land use laws. And if then that looks good, they're checking off on that. But we don't even have that ordinance yet. So Greg, if you want to, you're the one working on the ordinance, Greg. So if you want to add.
Yeah, so the chairman's question is, in general, the zoning officer for outdoor cafes, same way, I anticipate it be working the same way as the outdoor cafes and permits under the code. However, once you get over a certain size tent, and depending on what you're doing under it, it could have fire code, Uniform Fire Safety Act implications. And so I set it up in other towns who are smaller than you and less complicated, is that if you're not implicating any of those restrictions and just the zoning officer, But once you get over 30 by 30 with a tent, I'm pretty sure, and I'm still looking into this before I do the ordinance for here, you need fire code. So the answer is, from a zoning and a code enforcement perspective, in-house right here, we're going to try to do it with just George Waterman, the zoning officer, to make it as easy as possible for businesses. But to the extent people want to cook outside or do other stuff, I mean, it's going to get more complicated now with the fire officials. So we're working on the parameters to try to make it as simple as possible for the business owners. But at this moment, I couldn't guarantee you that there's going to be more than just the zoning officer involved on some of these, because it's, fires. We can't wait fire in emergency, non-emergency. Fire's fire. Have to make sure everyone's safe. So I don't know the answer to your question in total yet, but generally we're going to try to make it easy, but there may be fire code involved.
All right, no, because I see that a tent has been placed in the parking lot of Darcy's, leaving no parking space whatsoever. I mean, this is telling me that anyone that's going to be patronizing Darcy's will have to park in the street, taking up valuable parking spaces from other businesses, such as Tuscany's Takeout or Rare's Restaurant and several other businesses. I understand we want to try to help the businesses as much as we can in this time, but yet, we are hurting others to allow one to prosper. And I would like to see the mayor and council or whoever needs to take into consideration the other businesses if they approve the tent use.
Well, so I could bring two things on that. One, that's exactly why we're doing this, because we can't have people just throwing up tent. And that person, I'm not sure where you're referring to, but I know someone did go to the zoning officer already. I don't know if it's that person or not, but putting that specific instance from now, because we can't have willy-nilly everywhere. But two, on the second part, there's no place where I've done this so far or explored doing this so far where they haven't waived the parking requirements in the town, because there simply isn't enough outdoor space in most places to allow these places to come outside. So the way it's been done in other places is relaxing parking requirements and allowing cooperation despite uses between the businesses, so everyone can start to share space for pickup, drop off, that sort of thing. In one of the towns that I also work for is going to shut down main boulevards for basically as pedestrian mall to get the sufficient amount of space. So that is going to be an issue no matter what. But our goal is to try to get a handle on it in such a way that it's not just a free-for-all, that we have organized guidelines for it. That's precisely what we're trying to do. Your point is very well taken, Chairman.
Well, like I said, I have concerns about the other businesses, such as Rare or Tuscany or, Murray's Uniform. Someone wanting to pick up something, there's nowhere for them to park for that, couple of seconds to pick up something. They're going to have to double park and create a problem. Yeah.
I will say this, there are a lot of Sophie's choices in many municipalities so far, and I know that Bradley Beach is going to have a number of them. To the extent we already did the beach discussion last week's, evidence of that. This is even more complicated, but we're gonna get through it.
Like I said, just take into consideration the other businesses around in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
There's a gentleman in user 1 raising his hand right now.
That's you, Jack.
Couple of things. Number one, it's like 9:15 and 9:30, whatever it is. Isn't there a possibility of having a general comment section at the beginning of the meeting as well as the end of the meeting? I know some other townships do have it at the meeting, so you could have like 10 minutes for general comments as opposed to, commenting specifically on the agenda. That's a suggestion. I don't want to make a big deal of it now, but it's a suggestion. Second thing is, we have here, specifically on 4th Avenue, 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. We have the bocce courts. We have the surfing group. We have access to the beach. We have a lot of people. We have a lot of traffic at 25 miles an hour. I think we should consider a 15-mile-an-hour, at least between Central Avenue and Ocean Avenue. Ocean Avenue in itself is 25 miles an hour. And we've got these east-west streets at 25 miles an hour. I think it's too much. We've got people that are on skateboards and every other bloody thing coming down here, which is fine. I enjoy it. But I think we need to take another look at a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. That's second. Third, and we brought this up before, and it's specifically Councilman Weber, we're spending $55 or more a ton to dispose of our trash as recycling. And the last time I brought this up, it was about it was a regulation, it was a rule of the governor, it was a rule of the state that you had to recycle. And I'm going to make a contentious point. We should apply to the state to drop that while this market is so terrible. This market for recyclables is so terrible. So we can pick it up again when the market improves. But right now, we have a governor who's all about money. He was in the hedge fund business. He understands money. We're throwing away $100,000 a year, minimum, the way I see it. So I think we should consider that. Let me get through I don't want to spend the entire night on this, but the last thing I had was, don't we have a possibility of an architectural review committee in the township? I mean, I know we have a zoning board, we have a planning board, but isn't there somebody that overlooks an architect and some of the stuff maybe that's going up is not great? And maybe we should try to get things to conform to a more aesthetic, opportunity. To me, it makes some sense. We have an environmental commission, we have other commissions, whatever, but an architectural review, it may not have much power, but it may have an aesthetic, sense that, anyway, those are my 4 or 5 things. So you can comment on them, John.
Mr. Mayor, if I could say something about the recycling?
Sure.
Thanks, Jack. Jack, I feel bad that you missed, I think the last meeting or a recent meeting where Biagio mentioned this. Maybe people have noticed that DPW, they're trying something new with respect to recycling, where you're right, we're actually paying more to get rid of recycling than get rid of garbage, okay? It is costly. But Biagio, a few weeks ago, started collecting cardboard separately. And instead of paying, and I think it's actually $130 a ton to get rid of it, they brought it as a recycling place and Neptune on the other side of Memorial. And first of all, they collected 2 tons of cardboard just in the residential areas of town, I think. And they got, I think, $30 a ton for it. So instead of paying $130, they got $30 a ton. Randy, do you know if those numbers are right? And that's we're not going to do what you're asking with the state, but we're going in the right direction, and we might keep separating out cardboard.
We're going in the right direction. We had, I believe it was closer to 3 tons, and we're at about 25% of our normal pickup on Main Street because the businesses aren't running full speed.
Yeah.
And we do get paid for the cardboard, and it also reduces the tonnage of recycling that we pay for. So, flatten your cardboard boxes, tie them up with twine, put them out separately, and it'll be a help.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think everything that you say is positive. However, we're talking about real numbers, not 2-3 tons. We're talking about real numbers, $100,000 a year or better. That's rough and dirty that I calculated a couple of months ago. So, okay, I'm all for it. I think it's great. So we get paid for something which we're not getting paid for before. However, consider the bigger effect, which is big numbers, and we're hurting for numbers, right? We're hurting for beach numbers. We're looking for numbers. This is a number. Anyway, there you go. I have my spiel.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, we have Deborah Hatkins.
Yes, hi, this is Deborah Hatkins, 807 Ocean Avenue. I have a couple of questions regarding the concession stand restaurant on Ocean Avenue. I'm talking about money. What parking traffic studies will the borough require on this if the proposal goes to the Monmouth County Planning Board? And who will pay for those studies? Borough. And since the borough engineer is working with the restaurant applicant to help it become CAFRA compliant, what kind of investment is the council willing to continue making in this process, which could be time consuming and expensive?
So given that we've now reached the point where we're into basically cross-examination questions on potential challenge to the RFP, I don't feel comfortable having the governing body or myself answer any more of Ms. Hatkins' questions, insofar as, that clearly goes to the heart of a potential challenge. And we're not going to do that on the public record. If Ms. Hatkins wants to submit those through the attorney that's representing the objector, she can do that. But at this point, we're not going to answer Ms. Hatkins' prearranged cross-examination question.
Okay, well, you might not be able to answer anything, but I'll have to go on record saying that, we're all very concerned about money in this borough. And, we're putting ourselves out with a project like this. And I don't even know how this gentleman is going to be able to do this. And that's all I have to say. I just hope everybody gives it a lot of thought. And thank you very much for all your help with everything. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
So,
David?
and because I want to make sure Ms. Hatkins doesn't leave with no answer. So everything that would be spent will appear here for a vote, as well as any of the other requirements that she's discussing going forward. They'll all be public actions. So I don't want to dismiss Ms. Hatkins by any stretch, but I just wanted to explain that we're not going to answer those kind of detailed questions in connection with what's going on with the objection. But indeed, we will. There'll be nothing that's going to happen without Ms. Hatkins being right on the phone, or hopefully sometime in the future being in person. I just wanted to let her know that.
Thank you. David?
Frank?
Hi,
on
David.
the iPhone?
Yes, thank you, David, for taking my call, Mayor and the council. I just want to thank Bill for bringing up that parking issue. And this is not about Darcy's. First, let me say I'm at 510 4th Avenue, but I'm also a co-owner at Tuscany by the Sea on Main Street there. That Darcy is a great neighbor of ours, by the way. They've even brought me some business, so thank you for that. And this is not about me or my business. It's about the businesses on Main Street that are going to be affected by parking when people are allowed to put tents up and they can't park in a parking lot. So I would just ask that they council takes consideration some type of area where people can pick up our food, and Ponchos and Wanchos next to me. They're directly next to me. They are doing a busy season at this point with pickup. So I would just ask if there's anything that can be done. And again, I don't know if there's a cone that could be put there. I know I had asked the mayor about a parking spot, a 15-minute parking spot. We cannot get that on Main Street because it's a county road. I understand that. So I'd just like you gentlemen and ladies to take into consideration something that can be done maybe for some pickup for our smaller businesses. Thank you.
David?
Okay, we have Steve.
David, can I just address the business owner real quick from behalf of both of us? So David, Frank, forgive me, I'd call you Mr., but it says Frank's iPhone. So we intend on, I believe, putting this together and then advertising it, and then we'll run the business owners. And then our job will be with the zoning officer and our public safety, work that out so that hopefully every business owner will have some kind of orderly structure for everyone. That's the goal.
Great, thank you.
Where we end up or how we really end up nuts and bolts doing that, I've never done this before. I'm sure David's never done this before. And frankly, none of the professionals who work here have ever done this before. So please bear with us, but we're definitely trying to make sure that everyone, we're going to make sure that everyone has some sort of, might not be their complete satisfaction, but everyone has an opportunity. It's not gonna be like one, first come, first serve for businesses. The idea is to expand and work it out. Any conflicts between the two, life safety, logistics, all that sort of stuff. County roads will go to the freeholders for businesses on our county roads. And I think that's, I'm doing that in other towns. Once we figure out what everyone wants to do. That's where we're at. So I just wanted to make sure that you and any business owner that's on the line, and David, if you want to add anything to that, please do, Mayor or anyone. But that's our intention, is to try to help everyone across the board and try to do it in a way that, we don't have to shut down roads and stuff like that. That's really what we're facing at this moment. So in total.
No,
thank
it's
you
just
for
that
Go ahead, Bear.
his basic idea, it bears some consideration, just to have a dedicated area where cars can come and go, and because that's their only business right now is pickup. I'm in a room right now with the chief, and we'll take a look at it.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I appreciate everybody's help.
Well said, Greg. We have Steve Lazowick. We're going to try to see if we can get Steve again. Steve, unmute yourself. Yeah, I don't think it's working.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, we have a few more. We have Paul and the champion. Paul. I see Paul. Paul, you got to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Can
can
you
hear you
now?
now.
Android phone. I want to thank
Yes, sir.
Councilman. Can you hear me now? I want to thank
Yes, sir.
Councilman Gubatose for bringing my concerns about the community center, the former. I would like to ask the mayor, so when will the task force have its next meeting or first meeting?
Yeah, so Paul, that was something David and I,
authority.
that was something David and I discussed today. And then we have a number of designated slots from organizations in town. So we're reaching out to those organizations now to tell us who they're selecting from their respective groups. And then once we have those names, then we can get the first meeting to take place.
Yeah, I hope you will not delay this too long. We're already going to be past the deadline for applying for some grants that I wanted to suggest we apply for that would have needed some steps to be taken from the borough. And I really think that we should not put off this any longer. We don't have to spend any money at this point. We just have to plan and figure out how to get money.
Well, I don't want to bypass the task force, but if you have anything, please call me directly and you and I can work on it, at least get it started.
I'll do that, but I really think that you need the expertise of the task force also.
Agreed. Just don't want to miss out.
Thank you. Right, thanks.
We have a D. Greenberg.
Hey folks, how you doing tonight? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Just something my wife and I saw when we were taking a walk down the boardwalk. Asbury has painted a stripe down the center of their boardwalk, and I don't think we need to do that, but they also have a cone with a sign that just says keep right. We've noticed that people are not paying attention to what they learned as a child, that you stay to the right when you walk. So I'm thinking Belmar has done this as well, and it seems to be working. It seemed to be working in Asbury, except for the 2 young teenagers who had their heads stuck in their phones and weren't looking where they were going. But you have a little cone with a sign that says keep right. I think it keeps the flow of traffic going pretty well. And it keeps you from having to dodge people as they come at you from the other direction. It doesn't seem like it would cost a lot of money. You obviously have to pay for the signs. We have lots of cones. Doesn't take up a lot of room on the boardwalk. Any thoughts on that?
No, I've seen the same in Belmar. It makes sense, and we'll discuss it with the chief and the director of public works.
Yeah, and I think the Asbury model is a little better. Belmar uses those big barrels, and Asbury used the cone, and it seemed, it was very visible. It said, please stay to the right, please wear a mask. So the other thing about the beach was beach lockers. How come we have a waiting list? It seems we have a lot of room for them. And we charge a lot for the initial, was like $600 or something like that for the initial year. I don't think it could cost that much to build one. How come we're not just building more and generating some more income? Because there's a big waiting list as far as I understand, right?
I believe so. And that is something that we're addressing this week.
So we will be building more lockers then?
I don't want to speak out of turn. I got to get the information from the front office and then run that through the governing body.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. Greenberg, just so you know, we step back on this, beginning of the year, Councilman Kubatosi worked with Public Works and the finance folks in Borough Hall, and the initial payment for lockers is really goes to the purchase of the lockers. So we're not making any money off of that, or if we are, we're not making very, very much.
The dunes. How come we can't do that?
That's something that we're looking into as well. I met with the superintendent of public works and we've been in discussions
Yeah, I'm
about.
still waiting for a chance to talk.
Okay. But there's no physical reason why we couldn't do that, right?
There was some issues that they had, and I want to be misquoted from the public works superintendent. There was some logistic issues there that we may be able to get around to moving them. And we may have to do that if we want to expand and get more lockers.
I think the primary was water buildup on the bulkhead side.
Don, one of the other things that the DPW had told me is that when they face the lockers towards the water, they take a lot more of a beating with the salt water, and it wears out the hardware faster.
Oh, that makes sense.
When they put them tucked up against the dunes, the wind comes up and over, and they don't take quite such a beating. And that's just historical data. I mean, there's no. Again, it all comes down to if people want us to put them in a place where the hardware is going to take a harder beating, it's going to cost a little more for a beach locker. That's all.
Got it.
I mean, we can do it.
And the final point is with our elevated boardwalk, if the beach lockers are tucked up against those, they can't be seen from the boardwalk and by the police or anybody else. So it's a little bit too inviting for mischief if they're out of sight.
Okay. All fair points. That's it. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next up is TJ Cohen.
Thomas Cohen, 612 3rd Avenue. I want to thank Ms. Rice and Mr. Brown for their reports tonight. It was very refreshing, and I'm looking forward to many, many more of those. I was wondering if there's been any research into, I know I mentioned it at the last meeting, if Mr. Johnson could staff the beach, but why not just open it now until the 18th and pick up 20 days because kids aren't in school? And we may be able to make up some of that deficit. So is that anything that's been on the board?
I believe we're doing that. The beach is going to be staffed. Correct, David? We decided
just lifeguards only.
So why wouldn't we charge daily badges and seasonal badges and have badge checkers? I mean, we get an 80-degree day, whether it's a Thursday or a Friday, there's going to be a zillion people there that would be revenue generators. Especially if school was open, I would say, oh, don't worry about it. But school's closed. People have no place to go. I feel like we're leaving something on the table here.
I thought that was
Can you call
discussed.
my wife and tell her that school's closed? She would disagree with you.
Wow.
I thought that was discussed at the last meeting, Mr. Cohen, and I don't know if we came out with an outcome from the governing body recommending to OEM, and then I know there was further discussions, and we're at the point where we're at. I mean, I can ask everyone to revisit it, but I know there were some issues too with staffing and cost of staffing versus if there's bad weather and no one's showing up.
Well, sure. That was my question, Mr. Brown, about whether it would be possible for Mr. Johnson to staff it and that you were looking in that direction. So, if we could get an answer on that, that'd be great.
So just to be clear, Mr. Johnson just oversees the lifeguards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm overseeing the beach operations on the boardwalk, the the gate guards and the cashiers.
Right. I mean, the proof will be in the pudding, the first hot day we get before the 18th during the week, how much revenue we could possibly generate. That's my concern. I do want to say that it's been a very wet spring, but that being said, the parks look amazing. Public Works is doing a beautiful job. I was just wondering if before we have this grand opening on Main Street, whenever our governor tells us we can, would it be possible for Public Works to mulch the tree wells and kind of dress them up? Because there are a lot of weeds and a lot of them that aren't mulched. It would show a good face to the public before the reopening.
I think you're going to see that happen in the next 2 weeks, over the next 2 weeks, I should say.
Okay.
It's on their
great.
list.
And I want to thank the mayor and council for the bulk pickup day. Everyone was so happy. That was a very successful event. Hopefully we can work that in the future. And I was wondering, Mr. Brown, if you have any status on the Altice box on Bradley Boulevard. Has there been any further?
I do not have to do some more deep dive on that. I'm not sure, Mayor, if you have.
No,
latest on that?
DJ, they have not come back to us with another location. So Bradley Boulevard is off the table.
Okay. I mean, that's crazy because that was like a hurry up. We got to get it done right now. And now we get.
And they just kind of vanished.
Yeah. And do we have any idea, Mayor, when the budget will be presented to the public?
Yes, it will be presented at the next meeting.
And that'll be the line items also, or just two numbers?
Be more than two numbers.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Mayor, I don't see any electronic hands.
David?
Yes.
I've got Steve Loswick on my phone. He dialed me, so.
Okay, let's give it
to the computer and let him chat.
Let's give it a try.
Steve, you're on.
Thank you, Steve Loswick, 100 Ocean Avenue. And I have one question and several comments on the occupancy ordinance. Am I heard?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Okay. So my first question I'll direct to Mr. Cannon on Schedule A. I'm not sure I understand Schedule A and the minimum area requirements. Could you please explain that to me?
We're talking about the workshop ordinance?
Yes.
And the occupancy one, correct?
Yes.
Oh, no problem. Okay, so the Schedule A is it's the minimum floor requirements required for housing units in the borough. And what constitutes a bedroom for occupancy purposes. So that you can't, I mean, as a practical matter, I mean, in some instances, depends on where you go in the cities, renting closets as apartments or calling a closet a bedroom, things like that. And so those standards come from Section 404 of the International Property Maintenance Code. And they're listed in a big long paragraph, and it's easy. I put them in a table for this ordinance to make it clearer for everybody. But that's the source of them, the International Property Maintenance Code. That's the standard in every municipality and is the model code for area.
Thanks, I understand. I have a few comments, but first I want to thank the mayor and council for the opportunity to be heard on this, and I particularly want to thank Councilman Gubitosi for tremendous effort that he put forth to have this ordinance proposal reach this stage. So if I may direct your attention to section 328-12. That gives, am I being heard?
Yes.
Okay. That gives the code officer unfettered discretion to grant a waiver of the enforcement provisions of this ordinance proposal. And my comment is that giving a code officer, an unelected official, after the mayor and council has passed this ordinance, an opportunity to to grant a waiver that can be requested verbally or in writing is simply bad policy. And I would ask that that section of the ordinance 328-12 be modified or altered or withdrawn somehow so that the code officer, a part-time employee of the borough, does not have that unfettered discretion to grant a waiver just because somebody asks. So that person could violate the provisions of what may become an ordinance, and simply the code officer could simply grant that waiver. That makes little sense to me, and I'm asking that that be modified.
Can I ask a question of the resident? Can you hear me, Councilman?
And what?
Oh, I guess you can.
Can you, yeah, can you hear Greg Kenna?
So let me ask you a question. So it's hard to do this without waiver. One, because the property maintenance code has it in there as well. And two, because there are an extraordinary amount of circumstances in interior designs that are contemplated or just existing that cannot be contemplated effectively in an ordinance. Do you think a mutual, this is the residents, they had this issue. Do you think a mutual right of appeal, let's say someone within 200 feet of the property could also appeal the code enforcer's decision? That way there's a mutual right of appeal, not necessarily, so the code enforcer doesn't have unfettered discretion. I was looking at it, and your point is well taken. I was looking at it from the perspective of a property owner who's basically being told he can't do something, or he or she can't be doing something with the property. So I looked at it as their right of appeal, but I didn't consider that the people that are even complaining, really, that I talked about earlier, are the neighbors. And so perhaps creating standing for people within 200 feet for a mutual right of appeal of that decision. Do you think that would address your situation? Because it's literally impossible for me to write every scenario and interior design element.
I heard a little of what you said. I might ask then that the proposal be amended in accordance with what you said, so that, for example, I have a close neighbor who overcrowds all the time. The 4 of the 5 members have been in my condo and know the size of it. And the neighbor has a place that's half the size of my living room, and he packs as many.
Well, I'm sorry. I want to stop you there. I don't want to get individual circumstances before. I don't want to go. I don't want you to go into that, if that's okay, sir.
Okay.
But I think, I mean, a mutual right of appeal, I think, addresses what you were talking about, which is that there's going to be more people than just the owner affected, and the ordinance is written in such a way that it only addresses the owner's concerns versus the people that precipitated the complaint.
Here's my next comment. My next comment is, do the police have the authority to enforce this so that at 11 o'clock at night, when I know that the code enforcement officers are unavailable, even during the day from time to time they're unavailable, who do I call when there are 3 or 4 air mattresses piled up in the kitchen area that I can see?
It's going to be the code enforcement officer. If you have a noise or a police regulation issue, but generally this ordinance will be, the specific one will be, is enforced by the code enforcer or the housing inspector under the IPMC. But, this isn't going to, noise, other things that are associated with overcrowding are within the police's purview. So I never tell anyone in meetings like this, don't call the police. You'll never, the opposite, call the police when you have a problem. However, ultimate enforcement on this on a housing issue is going to be the code enforcement office. And that sort of issue enforcement is something I've discussed with the governing body, because your point is, again, well taken in that regard.
David?
Okay, we have Mary Ann Spillman.
Thank you, David. Mary Ann Spillman, 902 Ocean Avenue. I have a question about, somebody asked earlier about the budgeting for the the appeals process or the approval process for the Salt Pavilion. And it sounded like the answer was that there is some legal action pending. And I'd like to know, can we not know if there's a legal action pending? Is this something that the borough is already involved in? Why can't we know at least that there's some legal action going on?
Right.
Well, you do know, Ms. Spillman, because you were at the planning board hearing where the objector's attorneys came and listed all of his legal challenges to the response on the public record. I believe you commented right after him. And so it's a legal challenge. The gentleman spelled it out right on the public record. There is no litigation. No litigation has been filed. In fact, this matter has not actually advanced past that planning board hearing, still as we sit here today. So there is no, there's nothing being hidden. You've got the Mr. Blecker outlined his legal challenge on the record at the planning board hearing you were at.
Okay, but now there's nothing gone. There's no legal action or anything. So is it possible then for us to understand what the council's willing to invest in the process that was asked about, all of the approval processes? Is the council going to be budgeting for that kind of a process?
So I don't know the answer to that question, but the administrator can answer that question. That's not a legal question. If Dave knows, I'm not sure that anything's been budgeted at this moment, but if you know, Dave.
Hasn't been discussed at this time. We're waiting on the planning board to get back to us with recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
David,
All right, I think that's a wrap.
I make a motion to close the meeting.
Okay, all in favor?
Bye. Everybody, nice seeing everybody.
Yep, take care, be safe, be well.
Night, everybody.
Night.